Kia ora koutou, my name's Annette. I'm doing my PhD in mechanical engineering, but very lucky to be involved in a wider research group with Nick as a co-supervisor and Faculty of Health, because though my research is very lab-based for the majority of the testing I do on headgear, it's very much an important aspect of how players perceive headgear and what that involves. So today I want to talk a little bit about those two aspects of my research, because I do a number of different areas in amongst the headgear research, and I just want to kind of touch on two of them. So the motivation around this research is the same as what Kevin was saying, is not only about the challenge of what happens and impacts in junior rugby, but why headgear matters and the perceptions around what it can and can't do, and how we can improve the headgear potentially, not only to get players wearing it, but also to get them protected. And why it's important to not only have lab data that is evidential research that shows what headgear can do, but also have data around what players want out of headgear and what they believe or what their perception of headgear is. So when you look at the last 10 years ACC data on TBIs or head and concussions in sports, it's quite interesting that if you take just the rugby sports collisions here, you've got 39% of all head impacts through ACC coming in just from rugby alone. If you add in a couple more sports out of that are able to wear soft-shelled headgear to protect against head impacts, you get over 50% of the head impacts or the concussions, TBIs, are coming from just those 5 sports, which is a massive amount of, it's impacting the health care system, it's a huge cost, and it's a lot of injured players. So the first part of my research that I undertook was around the youth user perceptions around rugby. So lucky to have access to all the youth players through the instrumented mouthguard study to talk to them one-on-one and ask them about their use in headgear. And the key things we wanted to find out is why they wear it, why they don't wear it, why they might have worn it and they stopped wearing it, and the features that they don't like about it. So this research has already been published, and I'll just touch on a few of the key points. So the players were asked a number of questions about why they wear headgear, and as you can imagine from a junior rugby point of view, the key reason why they wear it is because their parents told them to wear it, and the parents are a huge stakeholder in headgear and rugby use. They also wear it because they believe it protects them, but also that the protection they believe it might give them is actually also from scratches, abrasions and cauliflower ear. So not necessarily that they believe it's going to protect them from a brain injury. And then there were other options coming down where they may have just worn it because they felt safer wearing it, but there was no reasoning behind it, or that they had been concussed before, so therefore they wore it. Why they didn't wear it, of course, very important that we need to know this. And like Kevin was saying, I was having a really interesting chat with David, the keynote speaker, about this, because it doesn't necessarily matter what rugby headgear can do or can't do. If players don't wear it, there's no point. Yeah. So they don't wear it because it is hot and sweaty, and they don't like that it has no ventilation. It's bulky and annoying, it's uncomfortable in general, and also that the thought process doesn't even come into their minds. They don't even think about wearing it. It's not a factor in their decision making. Also high up on this list is that it is not compulsory to wear it, unlike, let's say, mouthguards, where they just automatically wear it because that's a rule. 31% don't believe that headgear is needed. And then we have some other issues around maybe the appearance of it is not very desirable. It's a barrier to hearing and it doesn't fit well. So the key reasons, these are the key aspects that we want to target in development of headgear in rugby. So this is one aspect where I'm creating headgear prototypes and testing them in the lab, and some of these factors are what we're trying to get into these new prototypes so players will want to wear it. And one of the other key factors in our interviews with youth rugby players was how confident they were in their head protection without headgear. And I thought this was a really interesting one because actually the majority of players at this end of the scale, they are very confident in their head protection without wearing headgear. So they don't feel that there's any issue in not wearing headgear. So a really key part of that research. In regards to the lab data that I'm going to talk about today was a direct study of headgear approved by World Rugby, currently on the market. Another headgear on the market that is too thick to meet World Rugby's requirements, and another headgear that same company manufactured for us in thinner dimensions so that we could test it as a comparison. So we want to know whether this headgear can reduce the movement of the brain, both linear and rotational, in the lab, and we want to see if that thickness is a factor. So I test in a drop tower. This is the bottom of the drop tower in the lab over in mechanical. I test with a head form, like a crash test dummy head form, humanetics, with and without neck attached. I test at 5 locations around the head. This particular study was done at different drop heights and, like I said, with 3 different headgear. So these are the headgear that I tested. Gamebreaker Pro, which is on the market. This one prototype they made us in NPro, which is the World Law 4 Rugby approved. So again, I'm trying to reduce these accelerations and also the rotational velocity. So I do have a few graphs, but I won't go into too much detail about this. But the key thing to take from these graphs is that these green bars here are where we have no headgear on the head form, and the coloured bars are where we have the different headgear on. So this first graph is looking at that rotational acceleration, and we see obviously some reasonably significant decreases in acceleration when we put headgear on this head form in the lab at all drop heights, at all orientations. And then the same for rotational velocity is lesser of a decrease than the rotational acceleration, but we're still seeing improvements when we put headgear on that head form. And again, with the linear acceleration, we see, again, improvements in reducing that movement of the brain or movement of the acceleration that we test in the lab. What I didn't say was that the way we're able to detect that differences from accelerometers wired into that head form, and we calculate that based on the centre of mass of the head where there would be the brain. So without going into detail about the graphs, this composite value here is what we're able to do. So if we take all the drop heights and we take all the locations on the head and we calculate how much we can reduce the movement of the brain or the acceleration, we're getting substantial differences. So if you look, this is the linear acceleration, we're getting around 30% reduction in acceleration just by putting these 3 different headgear on. And then if we look at the rotational acceleration, which is indicates actually the majority of TBI related injuries is related to rotational movement, these are upwards of 43% reductions in movement in the brain, which is obviously all the values are actually significant at each independent height and location, But when you compile them together and look at that overall figure, it's a massive amount that we can do with headgear on. So the key other take-home factor is that the headgear that cannot meet World Rugby's requirements due to its thickness is the best performing headgear. And we also don't know where World Rugby gets its thickness limit from. It has a 10 mil plus or minus 2 mil thickness requirement. There's nothing in the data that indicates that that is a number that is significantly special. We don't know why they've chosen it. So it's basically saying they want a thinner headgear, but we can see that with a difference of 2 to 3 mils in thickness, there's a huge difference in how much protection we're giving that brain and how much we're slowing down that movement. So yeah, generally the choice of that headgear can affect that reduction is really important here. Just generally too that so there's no specific difference between those two game breaker headgear that I talked about, which are the two from the same company but with different thicknesses. They actually perform in a similar way, but that the World Rugby approved headgear offers the least amount of reductions in those rotational accelerations. In addition to this current research that was published, I'm also doing further research on other prototype headgear that I'm testing, as well as looking into changes to the regulations that we're stuck at the moment trying to get headgear through from World Rugby, and changes to those policies and research decisions. And I'm also looking into different lab research that's changing the surfaces that we impact onto, because at the moment we test onto very rigid surfaces which are not necessarily the same as what players would experience on the field every day. Generally what this current research study shows is that the thicker headgear performs better, which is problematic for getting it past World Rugby approval. So the choice of headgear matters, and I think also how that headgear performs and getting that communication through to those players is the next step of this communication, and trying to get players wearing headgear that is something they want to wear, and will hopefully change the health implications of junior rugby players. So thank you very much.